have your permission to continue recording this?
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. And then secondly, how do you say your name? Just thought I was cool.
Surayya.
Suraya. I love it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's African. So.
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Which part?
Oh no, I'm not African. My name is
Oh,
African.
oh,
My
okay.
family's
Look,
from Jamaica, but yeah, my name is
got
African.
it. Nice, nice. All right. Well, pretty much how this is going to go is I'm going to ask you a series of questions. There's no wrong answers as long as it's authentic to you. And they're going to be very open ended. So, if you need clarification, then definitely let me know. But just letting you know, that, like in advance, that a lot of them are open ended on purpose. And then we'll bring clarification depending on that. And at the end, I'm going to tell you which of the 16 personality types I believe best fits you based off of what you told me. And you are more than welcome. In fact, I encourage you to let me know where you might disagree or you misheard me, etc. And then, yeah, we'll work through that and verify. Sounds good?
Yeah, sounds great. I'm ready.
Perfect.
So,
Awesome. All right. Well, the first question I'm going to ask you is a question I ask everyone, and that is, what are things that you love to do? And when I say that you love to do, I mean that you love to do so much. The only reason why you stop is because you're absolutely exhausted. Otherwise, you would go on indefinitely.
okay, I feel like I just have a lot of passions in general.
Oh, yeah? Hit me.
So one of the things that I just love to do, I would say I would say definitely talk to people and meet new people. Um,
Nice.
like have conversation. That's one thing that I really, really love to do. I love to write. So in college, I was a student journalist. So I spent a lot of time like writing, really into like advocacy work as well and working with other people in groups. Really love leadership as well. Like in college, just graduated college. I took on a
Hey,
lot of leadership roles.
congratulations.
So yeah, thank you. Glad that that is over. Um,
I bet.
yeah, took on a lot of like leadership roles. So I love working with people, being around people as well. And then I guess for other hobbies, I feel like my hobbies changed as I got older. So growing up, my hobbies were it was dance, it was acting, it was violin, it was like very that type of stuff. But as I got older, I think my hobbies became more intellectual based. So a lot
Mm,
of writing, a lot of debate, a lot of advocacy, a lot of public speaking. Like I just spoke at a graduation weekend this week. So a lot of public speaking. And these are the things that I really like to do. But I definitely think it all boils down to using my creativity to produce something in the world. And I think that's kind of the overarching theme behind everything that I like to do.
wow. That was chef's kiss. Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm trying to keep up with what I'm writing in my notes here.
Yeah, let me know if I'm talking too fast because
No, you're good.
I
Yeah,
do
you're
that. I
good.
do that a lot.
Beautiful. Okay. Um, well then I think that was yeah, that was great. So now I just want to have to the next question, which is what are some things that you hate doing? Like the moment that you start doing it, then you just kind of want to claw at your eyes or something.
Um, I feel like okay, so what are the things that I find boring? Um, Sometimes I hate sitting down and talking about the past
Mm.
just because I feel like there's nothing we can gain from that. So what that means practically is that I didn't take a history class all in college. Um, because I always figured like there's no use in talking about the past. I mean, there's nothing that the past can teach us. Um, well, the past can teach us things, but I'm definitely
Right.
like very like forward looking. So I don't
Got it.
like to sit down and talk about the past. I don't like to be pessimistic. So
Mm.
I really hate conversations that are focused on what is wrong with the situation. I really like those conversations that focus on what can go right.
Right.
Um, I'm pretty analytical myself, but I don't like to like drag myself down into analysis paralysis. So any sort of conversation that really has a negative tone or is very, this is wrong, that is wrong, that is wrong, can drain my energy really, really fast.
Mm.
Um, Another thing that I hate when we put plans into motion and we don't try to work towards them. Um, that's something that I always find boring, like just the cheap talk, I guess you would say. The oh, this and that and that and that. And like I like those conversations, but I also feel like I want to feel like something comes out of these conversations, these brainstorming conversations. So a lot of the time, like I'll be bored if I figure, okay, they're just like selling me a bunch of lies. Um, what's another thing that I find boring? I think just like materialism in general, I find boring. I feel like our society has to move beyond that. And I find like I've always been that girl that I struggled sometimes in school because I never was the like weavy or like all these long nails type of thing. I always found that really boring.
Mm.
But you know, I went to a predominantly Black high school and middle school.
Oh,
So I grew up
nice, nice.
around a lot of people who like style and fashion was like their thing. And I
Right.
like fashion, but I think fashion should be used to like express who you are, not so
Yes.
much follow trends. And
Facts.
so I'm not like a trend hopper
Yeah,
type
yeah.
of person. So I find that stuff kind of boring, like thinking about what color weave to wear and like thinking about what nails to buy. And like I find those conversations boring. I'll participate in them,
Mhm.
but those aren't my favorite conversations.
That's good. That makes sense. And it's interesting too how you brought up the cultural aspect of it. Like I feel like especially as Black people, I've noticed that we're about looking good. Like when you go to church, even like you don't really see white people like like, oh, we're gonna dress our best to go to church. But then it's Black people, it's like hey, Sunday best. You bring your best dress and all of that. And yeah, it's just we just love to bring the sauce everywhere that we go, which I love it. I love it. Just like you said, the self-expression. But when it becomes like too much of a materialistic thing that's like now just trend setting and trend hopping and all of that, then I definitely feel what you mean. It's like, okay, like we're probably paying a little bit too much attention here, and it doesn't have as much meaning behind it. And I'm assuming, correct me
Mhm.
if I'm wrong, that you're pretty much saying that again, you can partake, but it needs to have meaning behind it.
Yeah, I feel like I can. To be honest, I'm trying to work in the fashion industry. So that's
Oh,
like another thing
nice.
that I'm trying to do. Um, so I can partake, but for me, there's a bigger picture. There's a bigger reason why I'm doing it besides
Right.
like looking good on Instagram.
For sure.
And materialism always bored me. So I went to a college with a bunch of rich people and they would always talk about, oh, like Cartier and Gucci this and that. And like those conversations would always, I would drown out those people. Not only because like my one of my dreams is to build a fashion brand to rival the House of Gucci, but
Mhm.
because I don't really think that materialism has gotten us anywhere as a people, as a
Mm.
collective. So I'm not really into that. So that kind of bores me. Hopefully that's a comprehensive like take of everything that bores me.
Yes, absolutely. That was both your flow and anti-flow have been again chef's kiss, like just stunning. No pressure for the rest of the questions. Okay, well now I want to ask, how would you say that other people would describe you, even if you disagreed?
Yeah, so people always say I actually did this exercise a while back. So some of
Okay,
the I feel like I might have them, but I can just off the top of my head say what some people said about me.
for
So
sure.
everyone said passionate, strong. Um somebody said like leader, optimistic, responsible. Um everyone was saying like intelligent, articulate. Um I think yeah, I have the answers, but people tend to see me as passionate and strong, but also a leader, responsible. Some people said caring. Um, I think that the reason why I decided to like get this typing is because I think that there's how I see myself, and I think there's how other people see me, and
Okay.
sometimes they don't align. So I went to business school, and I really feel like people see me as like, Surayya gets things done. She's super strong. She's super passionate. But I
Mhm.
also have a caring, compassionate side that I think sometimes a lot of people don't see. I wouldn't say anyone says I'm mean now, but sometimes, being strong and then also being a Black woman and being outspoken as I am and passionate
Yeah.
as I am, that can be interpreted differently. And it has been interpreted differently
Oh yeah.
by
Sure.
different types of people.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people would say strong, passionate, creative, intelligent, articulate. Sometimes people say I'm witty, like I can easily put things together, that type of stuff, optimistic, responsible. These are the things that people tend to use to describe me. But like other people that I've worked with would probably say, oh, like Surayya is super strong, stubborn, strong-willed. So I think that I want people to see the caring side of me, but I think sometimes you have to know me to really see that side. Um, you're gonna see the other sides of me, which are great, but it
Mhm.
definitely takes time for people to see like compassion and the other areas that I have um, within me. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Again, very comprehensive. That's great. Um, you kind of already touched on it, but then yeah, how would you further go into how you view yourself? So maybe some of the things that you disagreed with from how others view you, or some things that maybe other people don't really know as much about you. Like I know you said maybe like the compassion and the caring, but what else there?
I think a lot of people don't know how um I've been in like a corporate world for a while, so like this doesn't really come out. But I think a lot of people don't know how like I guess how like goofy I can be or like how witty I can be.
Mm,
It comes out, of course, like when I'm speaking to people and stuff like that. But sometimes I think people don't know the depths of my humor and like where it can go. I keep that
yeah,
to
yeah.
myself because sometimes the jokes are inappropriate. But I'm definitely like I like
Okay.
to joke around with myself all the time, and like also when I'm close to people, joke around. So I think a lot of people don't see that. I
Yeah.
would say everything that they say, strong-willed, stubborn. Yeah, I can be stubborn. Yes,
Mm,
I'm strong-willed. Yes, I'm outspoken. Like, yes, I can be blunt at times. Like, I see that in myself, so I can't even like argue with that. I
for
think
sure.
it depends on the audience. Like, some people see those things as great things, and they'll say, like, "Oh, Surayya is a great leader, and she's like all of these things." And then other people will see that as like, "Oh, well, she's an angry black woman." Like I've been slapped with that too.
Mm,
So I think that for me, I try to see myself in a positive light, so I can't really argue with anything that anyone said. I think the only thing that I would add is that a lot of people don't know like how silly I am, and also I think how artistic I am. Um, a lot of people know that I'm creatively talented. So in my leadership, like I always was, I guess some people would call me the visionary. Like I always came up with the plan and I always had the vision for where we were going.
mm,
But a lot of people don't know, like I grew up dancing. I grew up acting and stuff like that. And I'm also getting into music. So played the violin, tried to play the guitar, trying to play the piano. I think a lot of people don't know how much I respect the arts and like I secretly do design sometimes. So like I have that other side to me that I think maybe it's business school, but it didn't really come out as much. Yeah.
mm. I see. Okay. Cool. What brought you into the corporate world? Like, what drew you there?
Um, to be honest, it was the fact that I always wanted to be an entrepreneur growing up. Like I grew up and I always was the student body president, like middle school and high school. So in those roles, I really was challenged to think about like how can I use whatever leadership skills I have to really improve the environment around me. And I always had a lot of ideas. I always had the willpower to put behind my ideas, and also I always knew how to rally a team and get
Mm,
that going. So I feel like that's what drew me to business, just the possibilities that exist for building, generational wealth for me, my family, changing the narrative on Black women in leadership, showing up and showing out. And I think that's what really draws me to business, just the possibilities that it represents.
yeah.
You can start with one business and it can become so many other businesses, and so many people become employed, and your family goes from zero net worth to millionaires. Like just the possibility, I feel like that's what attracted me to business. I'm a big dreamer, I'm a big thinker, as I always say, but I also have the willpower to like work when I want to get things done. So I think that's what attracted me to business. Not like greed or anything, but just that vision of what I can do in the world if I marshal resources and people behind um, not only just a cause, but just a desire to see our vision
Mm,
manifested. I think that's something that, yeah, makes me feel really powerful and attracted me to business.
very beautiful, articulated. I like how you said that too. Not just a cause, but a desire.
Yeah. I'm working in VC right now with entrepreneurs. So I'm working on the investment team that funds entrepreneurs. And like, I think that for me is something that makes me feel good because you see businesses go from that seed stage and that idea
Yeah.
stage into something that into actualizing. And I think I'm really attracted to the potential of things. Um, yeah. So that's also what motivates me.
Nice. Nice. Cool. Gonna ask a little bit more. Um, and this one might be a little bit challenging for you. Who knows? depending on what you said earlier. But describe to me how you were like as a child,
Oh God.
and maybe what even other people said about you or like teachers about you.
Definitely, like, I was a big talker.
Mm,
So from I was young, I've been like, now I'm a public speaker. So
right.
that helps me now. But like when I was young, I was a big talker. I was definitely the leader in my family. Like I was the leader amongst my siblings, even though I was a middle child.
Nice.
Um, I was definitely pretty bold. Like liked to dance. Liked to be in drama club and stuff like that. Always been creative, so always thought of dance routines. Always thought of different areas and things that I could do with my creativity. Um, so yeah, like I was into many different things. So when I look at my childhood, I played violin. I was doing poetry. I was on step team. I did many, many different things. I also was a peer mediator. So I was a peer counselor from I was young.
Mm,
People would always say I was like wise beyond my years. They would always say that. And like I always knew, they would say, oh, well, you always know what to say to get people to be interested. So I always was very, my mom would call it quirky, but I would say like multifaceted. Many different things I like to do. Also wanted to play soccer. So I went through a phase where I was into sports, did cheerleading, did gymnastics team. So I was definitely
wow.
like, yeah, I was definitely into many different things. And then I ended up becoming student government president in middle school. And then I kept on doing student government debate. So I went through like different phases of my life. Um, and then I ended up in business. So I definitely like, I was very open minded, wanted to try whatever I could try. Very very extroverted with the world in terms of how I engaged with it. I wasn't always socially extroverted. Now there were times when I was shy, but people would always say when you get Surayya talking, she's gonna start talking and like she's not gonna stop. So everybody knew me like really bold with my opinions from I was young, really witty from I was young, jokester at times. And yeah, like that's how people would describe me, just like really energetic, passionate, full of life, and full of ideas and dreams.
Nice. What has changed since then, if anything?
Um, Dang, because I feel like I've kind of always been the same person, but I
Yeah.
think what has changed now at this point in my life is that I'm thinking things through in a way that I've never thought them through before. Like I think
Mm,
becoming a full-fledged adult and like leaving college has challenged me to be more um reflective and really think about my place in the world. I still am very engaged, like I like to engage with the world, but I've had some experiences, like work experiences that didn't go so well, like social life experiences that didn't go so well. So I definitely am more reflective in this age and stage of my life than I have been. I've also developed as I've become older more discipline, more self-discipline, because I realized that as much as I'm a ball of energy and fire and all that other stuff, I
yeah.
feel like I had to realize that I had to sit down and think about, hey, what's my vision? Where am I going? And be more intentional. So in this season of my life, I'm probably the most intentional I've ever been. But that's
Mm,
definitely with me growing up and realizing energy has to be directed somewhere.
wow.
And that's something that I've had to learn as someone who like, yeah, like all these passions, all this other stuff. I'm realizing I have to sow my oats somewhere and really
Mm,
take time to sit down and think, one of my goals is to write a book in the next 5 years. And that's going to require me to sit down and write every day and practice. So what's changing about me now is that I'm learning how to funnel my energy into structured activities. Um, yeah, but I don't think much has changed. Yeah, I don't think much has changed. I feel like I've always been the same person, but now I'm trying to cultivate more discipline in my everyday life and
mm,
be more mindful about, what I eat. Do I get enough sunlight? Am I drinking enough water? Like just being mindful of that stuff because I wasn't always mindful of that. So
mm,
becoming
mm.
more mindful.
Yeah, it makes sense. Um, so based off of what you just said, uh, I guess I will want to ask, like, how would you describe your relationship with your body? Like being present, and I know that you said that you were really sporty and like all of that. So it seems like, if I'm not mistaken, like you have a good sense of when to take action you're pretty in tune with your body to an extent, maybe a great extent, maybe like a like, but yeah, tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I'm definitely more heady than I am into my body. I
Mhm.
just feel like I have good control over my body, being that I come from a family of athletes and dancers, and but I'm definitely more. I prefer the mind, the life of the mind, more than I prefer the life of the body. If that
For
makes
sure.
sense. And I feel like most things for me start mentally. So it starts with a vision. Even before I would dance, it would start with the vision of me dancing and doing a great job, and then my body would just execute. So I
Mm,
think for me, most things start with the vision, and I have to remind myself to get enough sunlight and I have to remind myself to do that stuff, because normally like I'll just sit in the conversation and get lost in the conversation or get
right.
lost in whatever I'm doing, that I have to remind myself that like, hey, there I have to remind myself and to do these external things. um so yeah, like I'm good at that. And I think like we also talked about being black, and like even if you're more mental, you're forced to still, show up in that way.
Yeah.
So I think especially with my like Jamaican culture is like all over the place. So that's how
Yep.
so I grew up in that culture where a lot of dancing, a lot of good food, a lot of bright colors. So I'm used to that area of my life, but I definitely feel like I excel most in using my mind to produce a
Mm.
vision, or using my mind to generate thoughts. Um, yeah, because I there are times when the keys will be on the countertop and I'll not see them. That's the type of person that I am sometimes, and it's hard because people are like, "Oh, you got to be more detail oriented." It's like, dang, like I'm trying, but sometimes I think about the overall. Like I see the overall thing, and I'll just get lost in that sauce and forget about the details. Or yeah, I'm just not very detail oriented. Like I'm trying, I'm really trying, I'm really trying. Um, but it's definitely something that I have to work on. But I'm gonna grow in that area. But yeah, like when I talked about the external world and the sporty, like I said, it's like growing up and like those are the activities available. And
Mm.
I just felt, yeah, like I felt like dancing and those things. Sorry, can you close the door? I felt like dancing and those things was like very, very, very comforting for me. Like I felt like it was a hobby, but most of my life spent, like thinking about things. That would just be my hobby and my like outlet for all my mental energy.
Heard. Okay. Um, so then I'm assuming, well, how would you say that you fare with like then very like intellectual, conceptual, abstract conversations? Like, are you the one who's usually leading them? Are you just excited by them and you just kind of like partake? Are you someone who's like, yeah, as they're headed, like, as you're in it, then you're kind of just a listener? I don't assume that you're someone who is like, about them based off of what you're saying. But, even then, like, yeah, like tell me a little bit about that.
I'm leading and I'm asking questions and I'm pushing back on others. Um, like I'm the annoying person that's like, oh, but wait. Um, like I'm that person. I
For
feel like
sure.
there have been friendships that I've been like, dang, did I really make the conversation turn to that? Like there were times when there was a time when uh I was going to lunch with a group of my friends, and like to be honest, like they're very practical, pragmatic, like they're going into finance. And I was just like, but dang, like, why do we have careers? And like, what's the point of careers? And,
Mm.
like this system. And they're like, oh, snap, she's going there. So I think sometimes, and I get it from my dad, because my dad is like a hardcore conspiracy theorist. So
Oh,
sometimes I feel like I can go there, and
yeah,
I do often go there. Like, I'm the one usually, I think, bringing the conversation to that place.
I believe it.
Um, I'm the one that usually takes the cop. Like someone will say, "Oh, well, Steph Curry and the Warriors won," and then we'll end up talking about the basketball system and whether or not like black players even feel represented by coaching staff, and
Facts.
how are athletes treated. In general, are they commoditized, right? So I'll bring the conversation there, and sometimes I think I'm too deep. I'll be like, "Dang, I'm too deep for you." Like I'll be like, "Oh my god, I'm freaking people out." But that's kind of how my brain works. Like I'll see one thing. For example, I'll think about fashion, and I'm thinking not just thinking about fashion. I'm thinking about like body positivity and like representation and different body types and body sizes. And I'm also thinking about the economic feasibility of fast fashion, and like we're making a lot of money, but are we really doing what's right for the planet? And like so my
Wow.
mind will just go to many different places. And it makes me a good conversationalist, but I've had to recognize that everyone cannot take it there. Like some people want to talk about Steph Curry and the Warriors without talking about how sports exploits Black men. And I
Mm.
think that I have to just sometimes like keep it simple and keep it cute for others. But I'm definitely the person leading the conversation and also asking questions, bringing people in, pushing back, bringing different perspectives. I'm definitely that person that like, yeah, that sometimes can be too deep, but they love me anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it seems like, you know, obviously you're the type of person that like is about the impact. Like we need the how do we say it? Like what you're doing is actually causing an impact and influence in all of your circles that you're in. I mean, with all the leadership that you've been in, like it's clear that you feel like you have a sense of purpose and value that you're bringing to the world. And that's what's up. I really respect it. I really respect the way that you move. That's really cool. Even just the examples that you just gave and everything. Like, I'm actually curious. Like, what would you say? Like, because some people might even be like, "Whoa, basketball! Like, where did that fly to?" And I already have kind of like an intuitive leap, if you will, on what you mean by that. But I would love to hear like a little bit. Like, so basketball. We're talking about basketball and Steph Curry. Like, you know, the Warriors just won the championships and everything. Like, how would like where does that take your mind all of a sudden?
Um. Damn. Okay. So the first person, the first place that takes my mind is that like I wanted Boston to win. So I was like, okay. After that, after the fight about like Boston didn't win, why didn't they win? I start thinking about like I was just sitting and like I start contrasting the NBA to the NFL, and then I'm like, okay, well the NFL has this issue where they had this Rooney Rule issue where there were like this quota for Black coaches, but is the NBA much better? And then I
Mhm.
think to myself, and I'm just like, oh, well, do basketball players even feel represented by coaching staff? And then I would probably say, well, the coach for the Boston Celtics was a Black coach, right? And then the
Right.
coach for the head coach for the Warriors is a white coach. Like, I wonder if there's like a pay disparity. Like, I wonder if there's anything that's going on.
Mm.
I wonder if people are going to make comments and say, oh, well, Steve Kerr is a better coach than this guy.
Mm.
Why? Is it because Steve Kerr is white? Like, sometimes I like my mind will go to there. And sometimes
Mhm.
I get what you're saying. It can be hard to follow. Like sometimes it's like, okay, so how did you get this from there?
Yeah.
But what I try to do is I try to sometimes slow down and be the person that maybe ask the questions so
Yeah.
that I lead the other person that way
Mhm.
rather than just imposing my opinion or imposing my views. I'm very opinionated and like you also probably know, I'm super like my mind collects information. So
Mhm.
like I will always think, oh well, this and this and this, and then sometimes I'm contrasting. I think mentally I'm making contrast and comparing
Mhm.
things and trying to figure out what's a difference and should it be acknowledged. But I
Yeah.
realize that that style of conversation is not for everybody. There's some people that really love it and like they gravitate towards me, but there are other people that I've been called fake woke. I've been, you know what I mean? Like all different types of things. So it's really hard because, I've had to realize as I become older, tone it down. But I definitely get that from my dad. My dad, I guess you would call like in Myers-Briggs, you would say he's a strong intuitive. He really is. And like he really like taught me from a young age to challenge systems and like look deeper into things. And I think I take that from him. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel like I'm the more extroverted, I guess, version of him. So sometimes it's like not me keeping it quiet, but it's me actually conversing with people about these things and writing about these things. I was a
Mhm.
student journalist, so I wrote on everything from like Me Too to Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to Black Lives Matter, how to be anti-racist,
Mm.
to corporations and capitalism exploiting, like all of that. Like I wrote about all that stuff, so I feel
Wow.
like for me, I'm great at even my public speaking. Like I'm great at taking my ideas and bringing them to an audience,
For sure.
and speaking in a way that I guess people find engaging. People have
Yeah.
told me that. I'm not saying I'm
Yeah.
engaging, but people have told me that I'm engaging.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, people have told me that I'm engaging for them. So I think that I credit my dad for that because he's, I guess you would say, more introverted than me, but he gave me that challenge
For
of
sure.
learning how to challenge people and use knowledge to improve systems and look deeply into things. I feel like I definitely got that from him. So yeah, my conversation can be hard to follow, but I try to take my ideas and bring them to the audience and
Yeah. Yeah.
understand. talking to when I'm talking to them.
Love it, love it. I want to ask a little bit, because I know you said you're the middle child, and your father is the one who pretty much influenced a lot of the way that you think. And uh, how did that affect your other siblings? Um, yeah, like,
Yeah.
are you the one that's like your father watered all three of y'all, or however many of y'all, like in the same way? Oh,
Sorry,
give me
let
a
me
second.
just like lock the door. Yeah.
No
Give me like
problem.
a second. Okay.
Yeah.
So my eldest sister is autistic.
Mm,
So that created a dynamic where she was born a year before me. So I'm very close to her. My brother is very different from like he is also mm, my brother's my younger sibling.
mm,
He's also like we can't really compare me and my sister because she's autistic, but I
right.
guess you can contrast me and my brother.
Yeah.
My brother is very different. He is really into video games. He's really into
Mm,
sports.
mm.
But he even said the other day that I was deeper than him. I don't know why he said that, but I guess that's how he sees it. Like he went to my high school and like people were always saying, "Oh, well, your sister was like student government president and she was this and that and she was," and I kind of felt bad for him because he's his own person and
Mhm.
um should live his own life, but he's very into sports. He's very into like video games. He's very different from me. I feel like I growing up, I was more of a leader type than he
Mhm.
was. And I think that's
Mhm.
an interesting contrast for me being the sister and him
Right.
being the brother.
Yeah.
But I definitely was like the leader type. Like I was always a leader in school and I was very outspoken, and my brother is more reserved. He's sociable, but he's like more reserved than me. So I definitely think because I'm the one that like likes to debate, I guess.
Yeah.
My dad like gravitated towards me because he knew like, oh well, Surayya is the one
Uh,
that likes to debate like me. My brother doesn't really like to debate. Like he rather just he has his opinion and like just like, I said it once, but me and my dad will go at each other and then I'll be like, but
mm,
did you consider this? And then he'll be like, but did you consider that? I'm like, okay, well, so I think he realized that I'm the one that likes to debate, or like people say I like to argue. I don't like to argue. It's
yeah.
just I like the exchange of thoughts, and the exchange of ideas. And I
Yeah.
think that I'm the sibling that is like that. While my brother intelligent, but does not prefer that sort of conversation.
For sure.
Most of the time it's like I want to go here. He's very like likes to go places, likes to eat great food, likes to like he's very active. While
Mhm.
I'm more like I'll sit down with my dad and like we'll hash it out verbally. While he more so wants to go places and do things.
Makes sense. Makes total sense. It seems like, despite, because the what I was pretty much just trying to confirm, like, how much your father's type and influence, might have like just been what has been pushed onto you and your siblings and everything, just in case. Because I am on a track with A type, and I was checking with other ones, and it just seems like you just keep on nailing a certain type. So it's like, okay, but I'm still checking some things off. But yeah, like I wanted to know like how much of an influence like your father was having on that, to maybe have you showing up in a way that I was like, okay, well, is this your natural true self, or like how much of this is like tailored from your father, like But if you're siblings, it seems like what you're saying that is that your father already saw this in you, and he's like, oh, she's like me to an extent, whatever type that your father is.
Yeah, my
And
grandmother
then
even
yeah.
read one of my articles and she's like, "Oh, well, you're bucking the system like your dad." I'm like, "Okay." So for me it's like and it's weird because I'm the girl, and I'm like
Right,
I'm
right,
the
right, right.
daughter.
Yeah.
But I think my dad, I even credit him for allowing me to be who I am because he didn't silence my voice. Many of the women in
Mhm.
my family are like, I guess like look good, sit pretty type of
Yeah,
chicks,
yeah,
and I've never been that. I've
yeah.
always led with my ideas and I guess you could say to a certain degree my intelligence.
Mhm.
And my dad empowered that, and he was very forward thinking to
Mhm.
see, I guess, my potential and like what I could be. My mom, kind of just to go into family influences. So I'm really a mixture of my mom and my dad. I think my dad brings that intellectual side, that very, I guess, fight truth to power side. But my mother, she's more extroverted than my dad. So I feel like for me, when I look back on my dad's life, he could have had more of an impact, but I think sometimes social fears held him back, or like, his wanting to not want to be the odd one out held him back. Because he was going to do like a master's in computer science back when like computer science wasn't popular. So he saw that it was going to blow up, but he was kind of scared of what other people would think. And I think for me, I'm just me. My mother brings that like extroversion, that desire to like, she says she's an introvert, but I don't think she is. She brings that like more warm presence. And I think I get that from her, like that
Yeah,
desire to like connect with other people. And so for me, I think I have the best of both worlds of both parents. So I'm really
yeah,
blessed. But yeah,
yeah.
it's kind of weird when like your sisters, for my brother, when your sister's the alpha one, like that's kind of weird. And that's
Mm.
always been kind of weird, but he handles it really well. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I feel
Mhm.
that. Respect. Much respect. Um, well, I am curious. How would you describe your relationship with your emotions?
um, I feel like I'm good at knowing how I feel. I'm not always good at taking action on that knowledge.
Mm,
Um, I was just telling somebody the other day, I feel like the I have it all together image um, that I've had since I was a kid has had me waiting until I got out of college to get into therapy, like waiting until I was done with the work to do the emotional work. And I wish I would have sat down and actually said, this happened to me and I feel this way, instead of saying, I'm good. God is great. I'm going to push forward.
mm,
I feel like sometimes my desire to move forward blinded me from my own emotional needs and made me
mm,
deny them many times. And people would say, oh, well, you're a passionate person. Your passion is like one emotion. I think vulnerability is another. And I feel like I haven't always been vulnerable. And sometimes people think I'm vulnerable, but it's like, okay, I'm sharing what I want to tell you. I'm not really sharing what I think I need to tell you. In my peak productivity years, I went like 3 years without crying.
mm,
So that just kind of shows you like where I was at. Like I was like, gotta become student government president, gotta become valedictorian, gotta become, and in that quest, I was happy. Like, you know, accomplishing goals, stuff like that makes me feel happy, right?
yeah.
But I wasn't monitoring how I feel. And I think sometimes I let my feelings out in my writing and in other ways. And sometimes I will struggle to I guess show that strong emotion because I feel like I have to be strong, and maybe that's just being a black woman, or that's I'm just now starting to journal every day and try to take note of how I feel. But I think for a long time I was like, oh, I'm always positive. I'm always, and that was not the case. Like there were
Mm,
times that I felt like emotional wreck, but I felt that I
mm,
had to have it together, keep it together.
mm.
Also as my family influence. So my sister is autistic. So every time I would think about myself, it's like, oh, but my sister is in this worse state. And
Word.
like I couldn't allow
Yeah.
myself to feel. And I was just like, dang, well, I have to just be strong for my family. I have to just, so that was, I have to be the strong child because my parents can't deal with me acting up. They have to care for my sister. And I think that made me really deny how I felt for a long time. But
Mm,
frankly, I'm very empathetic with others' feelings. So I will hear what someone has to say and I'll be like, okay, well, here's what you got to do. I know how you feel. Here's what you got to do. But sometimes I know my own, and I had to catch this in myself, how I see emotions. I have a tendency to say, oh, well, you got to get yourself out of this, or you got to, here's
mm,
what you need to do. Like I think there have been times where I just want someone to sit with me and listen. And I have to be that person sometimes and just not give advice. Like just sit and listen with people. So sometimes I just like to sit and listen with others. Like in my work as a peer counselor, I had to deal with people who were like close to suicidal, and people would be like, how do you deal with that and just like maintain your mental health? It's like, well, I understand that everyone goes through periods of darkness in life and it's a part of life. And I think that I had more space, in my opinion, for others' emotions than I did my own.
mm,
Just because I felt like I had to be strong for everyone. So it's something that I'm learning now, to get in touch with that and to admit, hey, this hurt me. Like I was telling someone the other day, I'm emotionally intelligent, but I don't know if I'm emotionally literate. Sometimes I struggle to say, "Hey, this hurt me." Like one time when I was hurt, somebody said something, I reacted with anger, and I'm not proud of that reaction. But as I matured, I realized anger became what I felt like I could express to remain seen as in control. And yeah. So hopefully that gives you enough. I don't want to drag us along, but
You're good.
hopefully that gives you enough information. But yeah, so I decided to check myself into therapy before it became anger management. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I feel that. That's awesome. Uh, wow. I had a question, but it slipped me as you were expanding. Give me a second. It'll probably come back to me, but that was incredibly insightful. Appreciate that. Um, okay. What would you say? Oh, I think that was the question. It was that simple. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
I'm 21.
That's what I thought, just be based off of how you said that you just got out of college and everything, but wow.
Yeah, people don't believe me when I say I'm 20. Like I literally one time I was 18 and I was sitting with someone and they were like, "Oh, well, you're graduating next year." I'm like, "Oh, I just started college." So yeah, like I said, like wise beyond my years. People always say that. Introspective, yeah. But
Yeah.
I think I catch people off guard because I'm one of those like introspective, like I have a duality, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So I'm introspective, but I also present as energetic and other so people don't really understand that side of me either, like how
Yeah.
deep my thoughts can go sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Um so
Yeah,
that yeah, I've always struggled with that duality of like both sides of me
for
almost.
sure.
Yeah.
I think that that's actually a really tough thing in the world right now because uh, intellect and wisdom, intelligence, everything that has to do with being smart, at least from my opinion, my perspective, is usually associated with how quiet you are, you know,
Yeah.
how just simply observant you are.
Mhm.
It's a lot of people I've realized they can't even fathom that somebody can both be immersed and observing at the same time. They think that there has to be like a very, and I feel like there's very specific types of people who are capable of being completely immersed while also observing, and you wouldn't even know that how much information they're taking in, and that's part of their game. If you,
Yeah, I definitely suffer from that. Like sometimes as a like okay, so I went to a predominantly white college, right? And I'm a black woman. So
yes,
when people see me and it's like, "Oh, Surayya, hey, like, oh, Soraya's that girl, like she likes to party, she likes to." It's like, "Oh,
right,
whoa." Like there's another I don't like to first of all, I don't even really like to party, but people see my personality and they think, "Oh, well, she's into that."
mhm,
But there's another side to me and I think there are people who choose to see only one side instead of thinking that
mhm,
like
yeah,
both can coexist, and I think that
absolutely.
you can have depth and also be energetic. That's what makes me a really great public speaker. Like I thank
Mhm,
God for that gift because I can pull on my depth, but I also can present with energy. And people always before I started wearing glasses, they didn't think I was too smart. Like, stuff like that because it's like, oh, I didn't, my it's just like, oh, well, she's sassy. She's oh, she's that sassy. No, like there's another side to me. She's a strong black woman. No, there's another side. Like, I feel like people are looking for simplifications. And like,
right,
granted, I wear glasses now, so that makes me look smart. But
right,
had I not worn glasses or when I didn't wear glasses, there was a different reaction. Yeah.
yeah,
There was a
it's
different
it's
reaction to me, especially when I was like into dance and stuff like that. There was a different reaction to me. I
mhm,
noticed that.
mhm,
Like, so people choose to see one side of you and not see everything. And I think that's something that I always think about.
got it. I'm glad that you're able to see. that in you though. Like you're able to notice more of that duality, and you don't let the world confine you and box you. Because I feel like, especially at your age, it's really difficult. And I can tell that your parents probably really did assist a lot in that area. Because, yeah, I would agree with everyone else. It seems like you're definitely wise beyond your years and you're going places. So that's what's up.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you.
for sure. What would you say is something that's obvious to you but not obvious to other people, and then something that's usually obvious to other people but not obvious to you?
Okay. Um, Obvious to me, I feel like in leadership roles, it's always obvious to me what the next step is. And sometimes I think it's not as obvious to others. So like it's always it's like I'm like, oh well, so and so didn't do their deliverable. What's going on? And then I'll sit with them and they'll be like, well, I didn't know what to do. And I'm just like, oh, well, you could do this, you could do that. And then I get in this position where I'm thinking for others. And I
Mm,
hate that, but I get in this position where it's like I realize that because I see the way forward so naturally, when I'm leading other people, I need to break it down for them. And I think that's
mhm.
something that I realized in college. It's like, oh well, everybody doesn't know how, like, and sometimes I'll be like, oh, but there's Google, but there's this and that. Like everybody just doesn't want to piece together resources to learn something. So sometimes you have to present it to them very plainly. I think someone said, many of my plans are too pie in the sky and need to be more concrete. And I
Mm.
think that when I got that feedback, I was like, okay, well, y'all gonna see concrete plans. So they saw low chart, they saw like y'all gonna see concrete plans today. They saw because I was like, okay, let me break it down. So I realized that what's obvious to me is always after you do this, you do that, you do this. I definitely in my work with businesses and entrepreneurs, I always see what needs to be done. And
Mhm.
people always call me like a needs assessor. So I will say, okay, well, the marketing is good, but what's up with the finance? Or I will say, like, because I went to my cousin's restaurant, for example, and I saw that the staff didn't have on like uniforms, and then one girl was drinking while working, and then the cashier wasn't working, so the guy was taking like cash, and it's like I'm constantly people are like, oh well, you should be a consultant, you should be a consultant, like because I'm constantly seeing things like,
For
and I
sure.
guess it's obvious to me like what the next step is, and I feel like
Mm.
a lot of people don't have that sense of I guess of I don't want to call it business mind, but like sense of direction. Like I came
Mm.
into a nonprofit and the nonprofit leader, she basically was like, let Surayya do the strategy because she knows where to go. So like I was like, well, you need to do merch. And then like here's after we do merch, we can do this and we can do that. And like I feel like I naturally see the way forward. And that's something that I've had to realize is overwhelming for others. When I throw ideas at them and when I throw plans at them, it can be overwhelming. So I've had to learn how
Mm.
to slow down and draw people in. My last leadership role, people said I was doing too much. So that's just the like kind of area with it because I always like we could do this, we can do that, we could do let's get our plans together. And a lot of other people like maybe sometimes struggling to keep up or don't see the way and are confused and don't want to tell me. So that's one area that I feel like is obvious to me that's not obvious to others. Um, I think another area that is obvious to me and not obvious to others, sometimes how deep a situation can go. So
Mm.
someone told me like, Sarah, you like to get to the root of issues. And I think I always try to get to the root of things, like beyond like a coworker will be acting up and I'm like, well, maybe it's their relationship. And I can't say these things out loud, but it's that bad
Word.
relationship is like wearing on them, or maybe they're jealous, or maybe this or that. Like I look beyond the person into the mental processes. A lot of people said I should be a psychologist. Like they've always said that.
Mm.
Because it's like I'll look beyond the person and I'll be like, well, this person, that person, da 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 da. My mom was like, the way you break things down, whoa. But it's like I'll break down the system and like understand each part. And I think that that's how I kind of think. Like I'm a very systems thinker. Like this
Yes.
person is feeling this way because of that, or that person is feeling this way because of that. And like even how I manage people's emotions comes from a systems perspective of trying to figure out how everyone is integrated and how does your influences and everything shape who you are. Um, One thing that's obvious to others that is not obvious to me. Sometimes I feel like style, what's popping, like in the culture is like obvious to others and not obvious to me. Like I have my hand on pop culture by all means, but I'll just be like, everybody likes that outfit. Why? Like why? Like why does everyone wear the same fashion over dresses? I don't understand it. And people will be like, well, this is in style. And I'm like, whoa, this is in style. Like, I feel like my sense of style has always been very different. People would say offbeat, but that's very true. My sense of style has always been offbeat. So I think while like I have a cousin, style and trends come naturally to her. Like when I was nerdy, she was fly. So like, it comes naturally to her, like how to look a certain way. And I think that never came naturally to me, like putting on makeup and like that never came naturally to me. And it's obvious to so many other women. And I like for a long time, I felt like left out because many other women would be like, oh, why don't you wear this type of makeup? Or why don't you, wear this type of hair? Why don't you dress like this? And I feel like many trends have always left me. Like I've always dressed the way I wanted to dress. Like I feel like many trends have left me. And it's not to say I don't have a good sense of style. I think I do, but am I what's doing what the culture is doing right now? No. And I've never like it's very obvious to my family when you see them that they really are invested in like trends and looking like the Kardashians and that stuff. And I'm just like, why do people even want to do that? So I don't understand. Like sometimes I don't understand what it's like to be a follower, I guess you would say, like either of like trends or even of other people. Like I think I've always had my own mind and um even if I did a peer pressure thing, I would do it once and I'd be like, oh, this sucks. I'm not gonna do it again. While there are other people that have completely, I guess, changed their lives because of peer pressure, or even gotten into relationships because of peer pressure. And I'm like, damn, how do you do that? I can't date you if I don't like you. Like, so I'm
Word.
very different. And even as a woman, sometimes being like that can be seen as like, oh, you're brash, you're harsh. But it's just being an individual, it's just being who you are. And I think that I don't think it's brash or harsh, but I think as a woman, sometimes the gender stereotype is be a follower, be submissive. And I think I never really fit that. So all those like trying to follow beauty trends or try to be who a man wants you to be and all this other stuff never really, it's obvious to many women. It's not obvious to me. I can't fake who I am, even if I tried. And I think, it's good and it's bad at the same time.
I love it. I love all of that. Seriously, that's totally makes sense. Um, Actually, I think my final question. I'm pretty confident in which type you are. My final question for you is, uh, knowing what the next step is, and like kind of like thinking for others in that way. Like, do you, do you enjoy that? Like, would you say it's kind of be like energy from being able to help people with that, and all of that? Like, you like people coming to you for that? Like, do you feel like used, or like how does that? How far does that go for you?
I mean, it made me feel powerful when I was in a leadership position because oftentimes being the person to lay out the plan and like develop it and have the vision and like um marshal resources, that's a leadership skill. So as a leader, in a way, I want to like I always say I'm building leaders under me, but it also is flattering when people say, "Hey, well, I know we had this vision to have the first ever women of color conference, but I don't really know how to begin." So I really love to start with people and like get them going. I always say I'm the catalyst. So when I come, I'm bringing ideas, I'm bringing like blueprints of like what has been done and what the future might look like and like how we can bring that. I'm bringing a lot. So I really love that ideational planning phase. And even like when I left my leadership role, many of the initiatives and stuff were my ideas. And I would always meet with people. Like I would say, okay, the first two meetings, let's meet so that we can get this down. So I'm really great at laying the foundation and then getting other people to execute because I realize that many
Mm,
people are more comfortable in execution. A lot of people aren't comfortable in I guess you would say the pie in the sky phase.
right.
So I would always say like, okay, well, we can do this. Like we can have Michelle Obama for this, or we can, like I was like that person who say like, okay, let's get a speaker lineup. Let's start getting caterers. Let's start getting a location. You should do location. You should do speakers. You should do caterers. We'll meet next week and bring everything together. Let's do a vision board if we need to. Right. So I'm the type of person that I really feel like I bring the energy and I bring the ideas and I bring the vision. I also can execute. Don't get me wrong. I'm an executor
Oh
at
yeah, I believe
work.
that.
But I feel like I'm that person who I'm Surayya with the plan. And I think I'm Surayya with the ideas. And I think that
Mm,
that's where I've always stood. as, I guess, having an advantage over others. So yeah, it does make me feel powerful. In my relationships though, I think I'm the person who, I'm a motivator. I push people sometimes to be better than where they presently are. So like I was just telling my brother, I was like, hey, well, you want to study sports business and you want to work for the 76ers, you need to get your MBA afterwards. Like I'm telling him from now, like you need to get your MBA afterwards, because I know this guy and he worked at 76ers and he has his MBA. So look to grad school and then get an internship this year and then do this year. And even though my own career looks like a bunch of different jobs, like I've worked in education, nonprofits, teaching, I've kind of always had a vision of like,
Yeah.
where I'm going, like, okay, I want to be the next Oprah, or I want to be, the first Black CEO to reach a Fortune 500 majority owned company. Like I've always had, I guess, a direction, even when it looked like I didn't. And I think I need to give myself more credit for like not being as hard on myself. But yeah, like I think even in my relationships, I will try to fix things for people or piece things together. And I'll be like, hey, well, this, or, like I'll help my mom with like her graduate school. I'll help my dad with his finances, and then I'll go on and I'll help my brother figure out how he's gonna do his career. So I always call myself the strategist. So I think
Yeah.
that kind of could give you a lot of insight into. I just try to bring that even to fixing whether it's people problems, work problems, creative problems. I always try to just be the strategist. And yes, it makes me feel powerful, but I'm working on getting other people to do their own thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Perfect. Um, oh, this is actually my last question. Kind of just for fun, pooling what I'm thinking. Would you say that your idea of impact leans more on what you articulate and verbally speak out and say, or more in the money that you're able to generate and then place and invest into certain causes and things that you believe in? Of course, I get the notion that you're using both, but like, which one would you say is like more of your natural leaning?
It's gonna change throughout my life. I feel
Yeah.
like I feel like for now, because I have no money, it's definitely what I can do.
Mm,
Not just what I can say. Like I told you, I spoke at a graduation the other day, my high school graduation.
mhm.
So it's like I always say, if I can reach one person, I spend a lot of time writing as
Yeah.
well. I've guest hosted on a lot of podcasts. So it's
Mm,
like if I can reach one person, and I always think my words and my presence is how I can bring it. But in reality, there is this other side to me where I also believe that what I can do through leadership, even if I don't have the money, I can get people together. I can get a grant for us. I can get sponsorship. I can do this. So I think right now, a lot of it is what I can do. And I do think I like to be on the front line a
yeah.
bit. Like I like to be on the front line. But I think in the future, it will become, as I get older and like life takes me up, it will be like, hey, I can just write the check. And that's what I'm working for now. But I also still like to be visible, engage, and also I think, yeah, I'm more of the putting things out into the world right now just because I don't have the resources to necessarily tackle or even build some of the things that I've been thinking about. But yeah, I plan to be an entrepreneur. So hope that gives you some insight. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That actually just gave me an idea. Um, I think I'll remember it. I'll just keep it in for now. Actually, no, I gotta write it down. I'll bring it up to you later. Uh, okay. Anyway, okay. So I think, yeah, I feel like I'm pretty confident on which personality type that I believe that you are. And so I'm gonna go ahead and explain it, and then you let me know how much it might resonate with you. Um, if I start mansplaining anything for you, feel more than free to let me know. Like, oh, okay, like actually, like, I don't know how familiar you are already, like with the system or anything, but like, yeah, just let me know if anything's like you need more explanation, or if it's like, oh no, like I got it. I don't want to seem like I'm spoon feeding you, but in any sense, I believe that you are an ENTJ. That's what we call in the Myers Briggs system. And so the dichotomies is what most people know of, like extroversion versus introversion, intuitive versus sensing, feeler versus thinking, J versus P, judging versus perceiving. So I believe that you are an E. So when it comes to extroversion and introversion, most people usually talk about like extroverts get their energy from being around people and stuff like that, and introverts are drained by people, and that's honestly not always the case. Sometimes it's a trend, but it's not always the case. Depends on which type you are. Um, I like to think of it more as extroversion is where you focus your energy. So if you're focused on the external world, like extroverts are more focused on output in the external world and like putting things out there in a way because it's been proven that an extrovert's brain doesn't have to go through nearly as many kind of like facets to calibrate with their internal world when the external world, like when they are trying to like go in between the internal and the external. Whereas like for an introvert, they have like naturally like some more neurological things that's going on that has to have them like accept something that's happening in the external world. So for introverts, the real world for them, or the world they feel most comfortable in, is their internal world. So they're more about like the world of their perspectives or their ideations or what their values are, their inner deepest emotions or what their thoughts are, things of that nature, what impressions have been made on them. Extroverts are usually more focused on like output of whatever they're doing, the outer world of how other people are interacting on an interpersonal level, the outer world of ideas or experiences. And I feel like you are someone who, even if you're not always an socially extroverted person, as you might have said, you are extroverted in the sense of like you're outputting a lot and more of the time. And everyone has like, a an access to the other dichotomy. So there is an intuitive side to you, there's a sensing side to you, there's a thinking side to you, and there's a feeling side to you.
Mhm.
So in the same sense, you do also have like an introverted side, but I think that what's most natural for you is that extroverted side. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Cool. Now, I believe that you are an N rather than an S. So S stands for sensor, and that's all about like that's people who are pretty much focused on what's reliable and verifiable. So sensors are people who are usually like looking at, okay, this is fact, this is what's, realistic, this is what's always worked for me, this is what's been working in the past, stuff like that. And then for intuitives, they're usually like thinking about like, okay, what's happening in the future? What's the meaning behind all of this? They're trying to look behind the curtain. They're going on a more like abstract, philosophical, and conceptual route. And they're less focused as much on what's just always been reliable, verifiable, having to be able to observe with the senses. And I think that that's more of what you are, of an intuitive person. Would you agree with that so far?
Yeah.
Cool. Now, thinker versus feeler. Pretty much, feelers make decisions based off of how they're going to affect other people emotionally, or how much it resonates with them emotionally. And then thinkers usually make decisions based off of what just makes logical sense or what's going to get the job done, point blank, period. And they're making decisions based off of like metrics and data, whereas like feelers are often making decisions based off of like their values and other people's emotions, or again their own emotions and stuff like that. And I think that you are someone who is more focused on the metrics and data and like what's just going to get the thing done. And sometimes it seems like you might even be able to ignore the feeling aspect of yourself, but not, of course, to the full extent, which we're going to talk a little bit more about when we get into the mental processes. But would you agree, thinker over feeler?
Yeah, I feel like I knew that I was ENTJ, but I wasn't trying to accept it just because how the women are perceived in popular culture. I don't
Mm,
see myself as being that cold.
mm,
So I feel like I struggled with the thinker and feeler dichotomy.
mm,
But when I look at, like, if I compare myself to other women that I know are feelers, I'm
mhm,
very, very different
mm,
in how I see
mhm,
things.
Yeah.
And even the fact that I could just cut people off and like not even like care. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're crying for him. I just like, what? It's not, but I don't like the fact that it's seen as like cold. You get like you I think popular culture simplifies it. But I would have to agree. Looking at myself honestly, I would have to agree. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're definitely going to talk a little bit more about that for sure too. But I feel like there's a lot of reasoning behind that I was like observing. But cool. And then yeah, the last thing, judger versus perceiver. So I think that you are a judger. That's someone who's usually more organized, more quote unquote responsible. They like to organize the external world so that they can have freedom to explore their internal world like more freely. And then the perceivers, they enjoy being able to have a freedom in in their internal world, or in their external world, sorry. And then they have the internal world like a little bit more like organized and things like that. And so for judges too, they like to keep things like more organized, like I said, and they like to have a set plan. They're a lot less spontaneous as opposed to like receivers who tend to sometimes have a trend of being like late to things or like doing things like last minute and just kind of like going with the flow on a lot of stuff. Whereas like judges are like more formal at times and like decisive in whatever they are, and they feel more comfortable like leading other people a lot of times. And so I would say that you're more of a judger as opposed to a perceiver. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would. I thought I was a perceiver for a long time though, because
Ah.
I went through like an identity crisis of sorts where nothing made sense. And
For
I felt like,
you?
yeah, for
What?
me, even though on the outside, like I said, on the outside, it looks like everything is like
Mhm.
very intentional. I think sometimes I have to admit to myself, like, oh, like I'm winging this. But
Mm.
I think as I've matured, I've realized I might not be the best at judging, but that's where I prefer to be, especially when it comes to when I look at organizing others and like how I do that. I definitely think that's a judging thing. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 for sure. So the the real gold of all of this is like, so like I said, that was the dichotomies, but there's what we call the mental processes, or the technical name for them are cognitive functions. And there are 8 cognitive functions in total. Each personality type has 4. And the way that I like to see it is like number one, they're grouped from like the strongest to the least strongest. But then the model that I like to use best comes from personalityhacker.com. Best podcast that you'll probably ever find anywhere if you want to check that out. And they do this model. They have a model called the car model, which is essentially you have a driver, passenger, and then you have a 10-year-old, and then you have a 3-year-old. So your driver function is your strongest mental process, and they each all have an attitude too. So your attitude is going to be the extrovert and introvert. So if your driver is extroverted, then your co-pilot's going to be introverted. Now, if your driver is introverted, then your co-pilot's going to be extroverted. This is the part where it gets a little bit confusing, but if hopefully you'll be able to rewatch this video, and then if anything, just ask me questions. But yeah, so for you as an ENTJ, the reason why you are considered an extrovert is because your dominant function as an ENTJ is called extroverted thinking. So this function is all about what gets things done, what's the most efficient, like resource management. It's concerned with, okay, how do I get what I want? How do I get what we want as a group? And how can we do it in the most resource efficient way possible? It's about essentially, yeah, getting results and just making things happen in the world. And I think that that's where you shine. This is the water that you are just living in. It's that natural thing in you that's like that has everyone being like, oh wow, like let's just have Surayya just do everything because she's the strategist. Like she knows how to, like, this is the part of you where it's like you said, what's obvious for you is what the next step is, being able to think for other people, and being able to like bring that forth and like systems thinking, all of that. Like that's the part of you that's really like just out there winning, and allows you to be like, really uh, into like advocacy and leadership and being able to climb that ladder and just be overall successful. Would you say that you resonate with that so far?
Yeah, I would say I would also say though, like, because I knew about Myers-Briggs before, I
Oh,
saw
okay.
TE as like a wicked function, like, oh, people who use this are like super greedy. And like, but then I figured, okay, let me go and like contact this dude on YouTube. Because I feel like when I look back, because like literally college, high school, middle school, I was like
Mhm.
in leadership, executive leadership roles, and then like I always got awards for leadership. So then I'm like, wait, I think I might use TE more than I think I did. More than I think I do. You came pretty close to because someone else typed me ENFP. So
Mm.
I was figuring that I use FI and TE, but I don't
Mhm.
know how I use them. But I
Mhm.
do see both. Like I see both in me.
Yeah,
So I
I see
didn't
it
know
too.
how, and I knew I was an extrovert intuitive. So it was between ENFP and ENTJ. So I was like,
Gotcha.
okay, like I need some clarity.
For
But
sure.
I think this fits definitely. As I look back on my life, like it's like, okay, I've always been the one to say, you do this next.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. If you were an ENFP, that tertiary extroverted thinking would not be nearly as strong and as powerful. Uh, because that, oh, what do we do next? It's usually gonna come like okay, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. That's like the perceiver side. Whereas like for an ENTJ, you kind of already see what you and you have an idea of like what we're going to do when we already get there. You already know or have an idea of how that bridge is going to look like, and that actually comes with your auxiliary function or your co-pilot introverted intuition or NI, which is all about shifting perspectives. So you'll get into the perspective of other people, see how they're viewing the world in a way. You're going to see the longer timeline of how a system is going to be running, and you're pretty much able to see like, okay, this is how things are going right now, which is coming from your 10-year-old right behind it. So the flip side coin of introverted intuition is extroverted sensing. So I'm going to talk about these a little bit together. So extroverted sensing is the flip side coin of introverted intuition. And that's operating as like a 10-year-old, according to Personality Hacker. So you don't want this function to be, driving the car. But it says, really smart things every now and then, like every 10-year-old does. So this is the side of you that's like, hey, let's just jump into action. We can figure things out like along the way. This is the part of you that's like, yeah, I'm pretty good at fashion, but again, as a 10-year-old, you don't really care as much and you're not as sophisticated as maybe like the person who said that. Yeah, I know someone who's just super tapped into what's trendy right now, and fashion just comes so naturally for them. For people who have that extroverted sensing as a driver or as a co-pilot, it's again like they're so in tune with what's going on around them. They're so in tune with like the present and everything. They're so in tune with like aesthetics and all of that, that's what comes like most natural for them. But as a 10-year-old, you get like a little bit of the flavor of that. Like you said, like you're more sporty when you were a kid, like when you were younger. And you do have a good sense of style and everything, and you're able to like, see things, you're able to hop into action. But as you grew older, that auxiliary function of introverted intuition, you said that's when you started getting more into like intellectual things, and materialism became less of a thing for you, if it ever was a thing to begin with, because introverted intuition, that flip side coin of extroverted sensing, that's where you can bring meaning into stuff. It's like, okay, if extroverted sensing is gonna have me dressing nice and everything, my introverted intuition's like, well, it has to have a goal. Like there has to be meaning behind this. It has to be self-expression, or it has to be, like this is how I think that other people are going to perceive me. If I wear a blazer, then they're going to see me as more professional. That's going to get me my job. My extroverted thinking is going to be happy about that. So you're making use of that materialism in a way, and you're playing the game, but how to do it like to an advantage rather than just something that seems like aimless. So that introverted intuition, the more that you're able to hop into it and understand other people's minds and understand like where they're coming from and all of that, like when we were talking about everything, you said that uh, for your emotional output, you said that you pretty much um, where's it at, you were empathetic and solution oriented, but you had to learn to be able to just like kind of like sit and listen. And I think that was like coming like with your introvert intuition. Like you were really good at like being like, okay, this is what you have to do. That's the extroverted thinking and extroverted sensing, being like, oh yeah, let's just fix it. But when your introvert intuition came in, then it's like, wait. let's really listen, let's really understand like what's going on with them, and let's actually see the long-term plan or long-term like course of what's going on here, and what do they actually need from me right now. Maybe they're not looking for a solution right now or even at all. Maybe they just need me to listen, which then goes into your inferior function, introverted feeling, also known as FI. And this function is all about pretty much like, how does this make me feel? What are my values? It's the flip side coin of extroverted thinking. So it's like, this is your anchor. And it seems like you're actually pretty in tune with that. Like you said, you're good at knowing how you feel, but you're just not good at taking action on that. This is the place where, like it, personality hacker, they call it like a place where you can get gripped. So it can like hold you there, and it can often like paralyze you. And sometimes in favor of your extroverted thinking, you just kind of like ignore things like, nope, I just got to keep on working. I just got to keep on working, which personality hacker would call that a loop, like extroverted thinking and extroverted sensing loop. So then, in a way, you are ignoring your introverted side, your introverted intuition, and your introverted feeling. So you're not looking at the long timeline of how things will be going as much. You still are to an extent because it's still like your main perceiving process. So you're not going to be like total like ESFP mode, for example, but you're going to be looking a little bit shorter than what you usually do. But then when you slow down, which you talked about, like when I slow down and I learn to like really like okay, hold on, what's really gonna pan out, and you kind of like temper yourself there. Okay, let's slow down. Like let's get in this person's head. How are they really feeling? All of that. Then you're able to bring your best self there. And that's when you're able to be the most helpful. That's also when you're able to have the most impact, because the more that you're slowing down, then the more that you're bringing meaning. The way that you naturally are wired, you're naturally already wired to be outputting into the world. So I can almost dare say that as scary as it might be as an ENTJ, to slow down, and this is coming from an ENFJ, so I relate a lot to you. Like ENTJ female, that's stats could be wrong or whatever, but according to the Myers-Briggs surveying that they did like worldwide, that is actually the most rare type of all 16. And they surveyed like, I think, almost 17,000 people around the world. And ENTJ females are the rarest combo out there. So all of what you're saying about like, oh, it's just kind of like this. I mean, hey, I can definitely feel that. For me as an ENFJ, um, as an ENFJ male, we're the most rare combo of male and ENFJ that's there. So, like, to an extent,
Yeah, I think that's true. And then you layer being Black on top of
I think about that all the time. I think about that all the time. Exactly. Exactly. And if anything, too, like that's where your introverted feeling like really comes down into as well. For extroverted feeling, from what I've noticed, so extroverted feelings, like, the process that I use as an ENFJ, it's more encapsulating of like everyone. Like, I want to advocate for everyone in a way, and in like humanity as a whole. Introverted feeling, from what I've seen, seems to be more choosy and more picky. It's like, okay, I'm going to advocate for dolphins, or I'm going to advocate for Black people, I'm going to advocate for orphans, and I'm just going to advocate the hell out of all of that. And it's going to really like, like, so I think that that's where like your introverted feeling, being your aspiration function, you really are like honing in. It's like, I want to help my people, to come on up. I'm going to build that resource and everything. So that's where your extroverted thinking comes in. So your introverted feeling tells you what your desire is. And then your extroverted thinking is like, all right, y'all heard the woman. Now this is how we're going to do it. And then your introverted intuition is like mapping out like, okay, I think this is the best course that we should follow. And then extroverted sensing is like, all right, let's go. Whatever else that we haven't filled out, we'll figure it out when we get there. Because we have enough of this fleshed out to be able to work. And that's how you get the whole system like running together. But if any of them are being ignored, that's when you're going to have a problem. If you're not listening to your introverted feeling, like this is my anchor of values and what really means a lot to me and everything, you're going to lose yourself. If you're not listening to your introverted intuition, like, okay, this is the long term course of how things are supposed to go. This is how, other people are thinking to an extent and everything. You're going to lose yourself if you're not listening to your extroverted sensing. Like, okay, I think that I need to make these plans like more concrete, which is, I love that you said that. Like you said that you were known for having like plans that are like a little bit like nebulous and everything. And then it was your friend, like you were like, okay, I'm gonna make this more concrete, which is a really good thing to have like for the NI and the SE in the middle. It's like, okay, I know how to bring the really conceptual, heady things into action and in a way that people will understand a lot more easily, rather than it staying in the abstract cloud. Because we need to make this useful, which extroverted thinking loves to do. Because it's like, what's the point of having this abstraction if I can't bring it into into fruition in some way? And then your introverted feeling, of course, like I said, like it really like hones in, it gets happy by that and everything, and then you're able to execute the task. And because of your past that you've had, you know, like you've had, from what it seems to have, like really loving parents who have allowed you to be able to engage in a way. A lot of the ENTJs that like stuff that you'll read online, the ones who like hate people and stuff like that. Like, first of all, again, as a woman, I feel like that's already going to naturally, because of social norms, it's going to naturally have you be more in tune with your more empathetic side. And so that's why you're not going to be as harsh and cold and as brutal as a lot of ENTJ stuff that you see online. Whereas like ENTJ men, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times, like they're already like not tapped in with their emotions, and then society kind of like rewards them because it's like, yeah, you have to be more logical and you have to be more this. And so it's like, oh, I'm allowed to be a jerk. I'm allowed to like, you know, whatever. And they're not as encouraged to tap into that side of them. Again, not always, but definitely more frequently than the women. And then the women being like, according to stats, way less frequent, then we're going to be getting a lot of our descriptions based off of the men. And then now the women are starting to think like, oh, well, I'm probably an ENFJ, you know, or like I'm probably an INFJ, stuff like that. Um, but when you're really able to allow yourself to tap into that introverted feeling function and you create space for it, like you don't even have to develop it, just integrate it and create space to allow other people to feel whatever they're feeling and listen to that. And then listen to what your heart is telling you. That's when your extroverted thinking is going to shine. And that's why now you're able to look at other systems, because people would probably think like, yeah, you know, the MBA is run by these ETJs who, you know, they're just all about making the money. But you're the same person that's like, wait, I'm an ETJ and I'm the one who's saying like, okay, we're making a lot of money, but are we helping the world? That's TEFI right there. Like that's you being like integrated into your introverted feeling. Like, okay, I still know, again, introvert intuition, what's the meaning behind this and what's the long-term goal and what's meaningful to me and how is this helping the people around me? And so it's not always, if ever, actually it's never about necessarily what the type is. It's about the individual and how they're using those cognitive functions. And so in saying that, you're going to meet a lot of ENTJs who are just jerks and stuff like that. And you're going to read a whole bunch of bad descriptions. But I'm telling you, things are being done so that these descriptions are going to have a lot more nuance. There are those jerk ENTJs out there. So I would never say, like, yeah, you know, ENTJs are not actually jerks and blah, blah, blah. There are a lot of them out there. But what I would say is that there's a way wider nuance to it than people may think. There's a lot of women that I know, like just within the past year, who have been into type for a long time and always thought that they were ENFJ or INFJ, and they're finding out that they're actually ENTJs, and it's mind blowing. And it's something that's happening like a lot, like big type names. So I think that this is going to be like a really big wave where we're not going to be having these unnuanced and trashy descriptions anymore. And you know, if you're going to let me post this on YouTube, then this will be even yet another example that people will be able to be like, wow, interesting, and they'll be able to see like, sure, you said that you're not always going to come off as like passion, like as caring and everything, but from our conversation, like I think that it is very clear that you're a very friendly and kind person, and you have a heart clearly. And sure, like if anything, your way of trying to help people to get to where they need to be, that's your gift that you're bringing to the world. You might not be sitting there and being like, how is your emotions and, you know, all of that and whatever. You can probably do that, but the real gift that you're bringing is like, I want to be able to help you to move forward. What's the next step? And yeah, I think that that's the way of you showing that you care. that was a lot. But do you have any questions or comments or
No,
anything?
I don't. Unfortunately, I have to go. But yeah, we'll be in touch about the YouTube thing. I think this is a lot. I'm gonna have to just like shriek and like reevaluate my life. But it makes sense, like being a black female ENTJ, why people were saying my work ethic is intimidating or why like it kind of makes sense because I think that's a hard position to fill.
Yeah,
But like you said, like I think of my sense of purpose and I pull on that in tough times and I know why I do what I do. Like I know I'm called to lead. Like it's one of my gifts, and if I can use that to change the world and like make the world see women that look like me as leaders,
yeah,
and I feel like that's something that I would love to do. So
for
yeah,
sure. Awesome, cool. Well, yeah, I will email you this a copy of this recording and everything. We'll talk a little bit more about whatever it is, whatever else is to come. And yeah, I'm glad that you were able to come to an agreement here, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. It was nice meeting you.
yeah. Thank you. Nice meeting you. We'll be in touch. All right.
Cool, sounds good. See you
Bye.
soon. Hey, I just wanted to briefly thank you for taking the time to watch this video, whether it was on regular speed or 2 times speed, whatever it was. Just thank you for consuming the content. And around me, you should be able to see a few little buttons and logos for other recommended videos because, I make good content, new ones, but then I also have some really good old content too that you should probably check out. But make sure that if you really like this video, feel free to subscribe, to share. It really helps this humble channel to expand and reach more people and ultimately help more people. So once again, thanks for watching and hope you have a great rest of your day.